This tiny little bird decided that my life was about to get a whole lot more feathered. So picture this. I'm living in this small house, right in the middle of the city, not exactly a nature preserve, you know. But right outside my window, there's this old mango tree. And one day, this pair of birds decided it's like the perfect spot to raise a family. I was hooked from day one watching them build this nest, twig by twig. It's like watching one of those tiny architectural masterpieces unfolding right before my eyes. I swear those birds were more dedicated to their home renovation project than anyone I've ever seen on HGTV. And then the eggs hatched, these tiny chirping balls demanding food like every other second. I would watch them through my binoculars, these little beaks wide open, just like, hey, mom and dad over here, don't forget about me. No. I was so invested in this little bird family drama, but I never expected to become a part of the story myself. Until one morning, everything changed. I was just having my coffee when I heard this frantic chirping coming from the tree. I looked up and my heart just stopped. One of the chicks, this little guy who was barely bigger than my thumb, was just teetering on the edge of the nest, wings flapping like crazy. It was like he was trying to fly before he even knew how. And then in slow motion, I saw him lose his grip. He tumbled down, landing with a soft thud on the concrete driveway below. My heart was pounding in my chest. I mean, this little creature was completely helpless, just lying there on the cold, hard ground. I knew he didn't stand a chance out there. Cars, stray cats, the scorching sun, it was a recipe for disaster. Panic set in. I had to do something, and fast. This helpless, tiny little creature sprawled on the concrete driveway below. Oh, my mind was racing. It was a scorching hot day, and I knew this little life could be extinguished in minutes. The driveway was busy, cars coming and going, stray cats were always lurking around. And to make matters worse, the chick had fallen between the rails of this metal gate that was constantly sliding open and closed. It was like a ticking time bomb. I had to act fast. I bolted out of the house. Adrenaline pumping, and scooped him up to the driveway. He was so tiny, so fragile. I was almost afraid to breathe. Back inside, my mind was racing. What does a baby bird even need? I mean, I'm no avian expert, but I knew I had to create some kind of safe haven for him, and quick. I grabbed this old wooden flower pot I had lying around, lined it with some soft paper, and gently placed him inside. There he was, this little ball of eyes closed tight, breathing shallowly. I swear, I could feel his tiny heart beating against my palm. Okay, now what? I knew he needed food and warmth, but where do you even start with a baby bird? I mean, I wasn't about to serve him up some gourmet meal of worms and berries, right? I remember reading somewhere that baby birds need to be fed frequently, like constantly. So I grabbed a dropper, filled it with water, and with trembling hands, offered him a tiny drop. To my relief, he instinctively opened his beak and drank. Next, the food situation. I knew baby birds thrived on insects, so I ventured out to my garden and I scoured the leaves for the smallest and softest bugs I could find. Using tweezers, I carefully offered him one. He chirped weakly, but then to my utter amazement, he gobbled it down. Warmth was the next challenge. I positioned a gentle heat lamp near his makeshift nest, making sure that he'd stay warm and cozy. As I sat there watching over this little guy fighting for his life, I decided to give him a name. Kip. It just seemed to fit, you know. A small name for a small bird with a big fight ahead of him. From that moment on, my life revolved around Pip. Every few hours, like clockwork, I'd feed him his diet of water and protein-packed insects. I watched him constantly checking his breathing, listening to his chirps, searching for any sign of improvement. And then slowly, miraculously, Pip started to thrive. His eyes, which had been tightly shut, began to open, revealing these bright, curious orbs that followed my every move. His chirps grew stronger, louder, like he was saying, "Hey, I'm still here, don't count me out." He even started to flutter his tiny wings, testing them out like he was already dreaming of the day he'd take flight. As Pip grew stronger, I knew I couldn't keep him confined to that flower pot forever. He needed to experience the world, feel the sun on his feathers, hear the songs of other birds. So every day I would place his box near the open window, letting him soak in the warmth of the sun and listen to the symphony of birdsong coming from the mango tree. And it was during those moments, listening to the calls of his parents, that Pip truly came alive. He chirped back, his voice getting bolder with each passing day, like he was having a conversation with his family. It was amazing to see this tiny creature yearning for connection, for a return to his roots. The days turned into weeks, And Pip's transformation was incredible. He had grown so much, his feathers were fully developed and his wings, they were strong and ready for flight. He'd spent hours perched on the edge of his box, flapping those wings, vigorously practicing for the day he would soar through the air. I knew it was time. It was time for Pip to go home, to rejoin his family in the mango tree. It was a bittersweet feeling, because I had grown so attached to this little bird. But I knew keeping him captive would be doing him a disservice. One sunny morning, with a mix of excitement and trepidation, I carried Pip outside to the mango tree. I gently placed him on a branch just below the nest where his family lived. For a moment, he just sat there, as if unsure of what to do next. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, Pip spread his wings and took flight. He soared through the air, circling the mango tree several times, his chirps echoing through the garden. It was the most beautiful sight watching this tiny creature who had been so vulnerable, now strong and free, reclaiming his place in the world. I felt this surge of pride and joy, mixed with a touch of sadness, seeing him go.